We're a unique podcast for families of faith, produced by parents and pastors who understand and appreciate how hard it is to maintain your faith in a hostile culture. We're here to encourage and support you in the most vital role of all, parenting. If you're feeling overwhelmed and afraid, it's okay. You're not alone. Brilliantly Brave is hosted by two honest and engaging dads with 9 kids between them. A road tripper, author, and pastor, Father Brad Matthias, and iShine founder, solo parenting expert, and all-around foodie, Mr. Robert Beeson. Join us each week as we explore and engage with some of the most intriguing, inspiring, outrageous, and awesome parents in the world. This is Brilliantly Brave.
Welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. I'm your co-host, Pastor Brad Matthias, and I'm here with Robert Beeson.
How do you do?
We are talking to you live from Franklin, Tennessee, at least live when we recorded it. We have fun with this, folks. I know some of you have been listening for a while now, and we're appreciative, very appreciative that you're listening to Brilliantly Brave. But at the end of the day, we want to encourage and have fun with this. And so today we have a special guest. It's a friend of mine that goes back over a decade. I first met this guest at the factory in Franklin. Do you remember the factory?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's still there. So.
Well, yeah. I mean, but there was a time when the factory was the hippest place to have an office.
Yeah.
Do you remember that about 12 years ago? I worked for a company known as the Butterfly Group. Mm-hmm. And at that time, the Butterfly Group had about 45 employees. And there was a series of record labels there. And one of them was a gospel label. And there was this young up-and-coming guy, sharp dresser, sharp talker. You know the type.
I do. Like you.
Well, yeah, definitely. Just like me. Yeah. So this young man and I started a friendship, and he was the head of A&R for this gospel label.
Huh.
So
actually, I didn't know that.
I know it's kind of a hidden fact. A little bit like think of this as a special little insight behind the curtain.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so this creative, artistic, musical young man ended up leaving that job and moving out east and got into law. Went to law school.
Wow.
And so I lost track of Veronne 13 years ago. And it was about 4 years ago that I reconnected with Veronne, and I found out that he was not a lawyer, but he was a youth pastor in the city of Philadelphia. And so,
well, in the city of Philadelphia, don't you have to have a law degree to be a youth minister?
Well, I think it's encouraged. Yeah. I don't want to upset any Eagles fans out there, but it's dismal.
But it's an awesome community.
They have a great downtown and fantastic cheesesteak sandwiches. I know that. I
didn't know all that about Veronne.
Yeah. So Veronne has this rich musical background. Yeah. He worked with George King. He worked with some of the creative folks in the Christian gospel world. And I, full circle serendipity here. 4 years ago, I bump into Veronne, and he's a pastor, and I'm a pastor.
Yeah.
And we start connecting the dots, and lo and behold, he ends up taking a position as a lead pastor of a church here in downtown Nashville.
Such an awesome story.
What a small world, right?
No kidding.
Yeah. And so Veronne has become a confidant. He's become one of my pastoral accountability guys. He's a deep, close personal friend and someone I greatly admire and respect. And Veronne is a parent, I believe, of 8 children.
8 children.
8 children. And so we've invited Veronne.
7 girls, 1 boy.
Yeah. So he's insane. He has 7 daughters.
Think about that.
7 daughters.
You can't see me, but I have tons of gray hair. First one came when the first daughter was born.
Well, I've had a chance to meet his wife and children, and I can tell you that they are a beautiful expression of the love of Christ and a creativity. These little girls dance, they sing, they spin around, they paint their nails. They are everything you want in daughters, and Veronne is this amazing husband and pastor. And I'm so glad that you could make it into the studio today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Not a problem. The little ones now play guitar, they play piano, they write songs. It's just crazy. Hey, there's one thing you didn't remember, the snappy dresser. You gave me my first fancy shirt.
Oh,
you were wearing
really?
a $50 or $40 fancy shirt that I kept for like 10, 12 years. I wore it until the sleeves were too small. But that was my very first really expensive shirt. And when people say, man, that's a nice shirt, I said, man, my doctor friend gave it to me.
Oh my gosh, you said that. Okay.
I did say that. So.
Well, yeah. So
That's awesome.
before I was a pastor, I was a doctor. I hadn't really told the podcast community
Well,
all of that yet. But so, Veronne, here you are. You're in our studio. You've driven from downtown Nashville out to Franklin. It's about a 40-minute drive. And you literally have a pastoral parish
Yeah.
right in the shadow of the Titan Stadium.
Yep. You can walk to it.
Yeah. So you are in the very epicenter of the inner city of Nashville. And so you have this really unique perspective on parenting and on pastoral ministry. And so I'm excited to hear what it is you feel like God's brought with you today.
Interesting thing, getting down to Nashville, again, context, I have 8 kids and a wife. To tell 5 teenagers right in the midst of high school that, hey, we're going to get up and leave because Dad got a call to pastor a church down in Nashville. So you got to leave your friends, leave your school, and come on down here and do it. The little ones, no issue. You know, they're 4 or 5 years old. But your 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, it's a little bit different. So it's interesting in that when we talk with them, and I talk with them individually, pulled them into a room one by one and spoke with them individually. Because one thing I learned as a pastor, not even as a pastor, as a parent, one thing I learned as a parent was the kids need to know that they matter. And so a lot of what I did, particularly in a big family, and we're not just a big family, but we're a blended family. My wife and I got married about 11 years ago. I had 3 children from a previous relationship. She had 2 from a previous relationship. Both of those ended. And then we find ourselves together a couple of years later. We meet up, and it's one of these chance meetings there. And then we get married. The Lord led that. And so now we've got to blend 3 kids with 2 kids. And then over time, we have 3 kids of our own. So you've got this unique situation where I realize they are each individual. As much as most people look at them, oh, big family, a lot of kids. Yeah, but they're individual. So I had to learn to love them individual. I had to learn to teach them individual. I had to learn to parent them individually. And of course, moving to Nashville, their opinion mattered. We were going to move anyway, but their opinion mattered. They needed to know that their opinion mattered. And interestingly, God touched each heart and said, yeah, we can see that, Dad, and we're willing to make that move.
That's amazing.
We've been down here for 2.5 years now.
Wow.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I
Did
know.
they have to? Did they have to come around to it, or did they when you first? I know that teenagers, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, they're pretty established in what they do and who they hang out with. And when you first said, I really feel like this is something that God wants us to do, were they supportive initially?
They were supportive initially. And here's another interesting thing. And again, if I'm looking from the perspective of a parent, not even from a perspective of a pastor, from a parent, I pretty much knew what their responses were going to be. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because I spend a lot of time getting to know my kids. I look at the Gospels and I look at Jesus and I look at how he lived his life. And there's a great part of Scripture where he's going to do something. He's about to feed 5,000. He's about to perform a miracle. Matter of fact, it says that he retreated to a place to pray by himself. But as he goes there to find some time by himself, he sees the crowd of people. And he looks at them and he has compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And so instead of taking that time that he probably wanted to spend, he went and he catered to what the people needed. And as a parent, I realized that there's times where I just want to be alone, but I've got a multitude of kids. And so I take time to have compassion on them and get to learn them and get to know them. So as I pulled them into the room one by one, and my wife and I, we shared, here's what we feel God is calling. They knew it. They knew it. They were with me. because they knew Dad, and they knew Dad knew them. And I knew how to phrase the question or phrase a statement in a way that would remove their sense of fear. And they were willing, and that was encouraging to us. We knew God was in that.
I think that's huge. Knowing your kids is connecting to the heart. Brad talks a lot about, pursuing the heart of our kids rather than just, the behavior or the personality even. What kinds of things did you do to get to know them? What things do you, because it's hard for me. I've got 6 kids, and
I got you beat by 2.
Yeah, you do. So I can learn from you. So tell me, how do you learn your kids? How does a listener out there go, you know what, I work a job or 2 jobs. How do you get to know your kids? How did you do it?
Years ago, when we started having the little ones, and we had 8. And we had 8 from the infant. And I looked at the kids, and I looked at my wife, and I said, you know what, hon? These kids are never going to know what it feels like to be an only child. They're just not going to have it. They always have people around. This just from the outset, there's a lot of people around. I said, but they need the opportunity to be an older child. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create daddy date days. And my wife is like, okay, what does that mean? I said, I don't know. I'm going to figure this out. And I prayed about it. And I came up with this elaborate thing where it's a form, and I fill out a form. I leave it for each kid. Each kid gets one, and they've got to do something. I give them a time frame within they have to return it, which means they have to think what would they like to do if they were an only child. What would they like to do? Where would they like to go?
That's great.
And they would fill the form out. They have 5 days to do it. If they don't fill it out, it goes to the next person. I give the next person. They miss it. And then I get it. I see what they want to do. I make my research. I tell them what's going to happen. I leave it on the dresser, and they know I've got a date on such and such day, such and such time. Here's what I need to bring. Here's what we're going to do. And that was their time to be an only child. And I've done that probably for the last, 9 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is cool.
And
That's
so
really
each one gets an opportunity to be an only child. And that's the whole theory of it.
How often do you do this?
I try to do it every... it depends on when the money's available.
Yeah.
But I try to do one, twice a month. So each one gets one. I just took my longest daughter. She wanted to see Moana. So we just came back from the movies on Friday, and to see her face after spending a day with her dad, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. We did Dave and Buster's with another kid, or the Rainforest Cafe, or whatever they want to do. But that gives me that time with that kid to just talk, to just hear, to just love them, and for them just to be with Dad. Even my son, when he was young enough, he would have his daddy date days, and that gave me that time to get to know them, get to hear them, and get to pour into them.
I think that's incredible. I was thinking the other day, I drive one of my daughters to work, to and from work. She's old enough to have a car, but she for whatever reason has not wanted to get a license, and it's kind of a pain in the butt sometimes to get up at night and go pick her up or whatever. But what occurred to me is this is time that's already that's just Skylar and I.
Yeah.
So if I'm deliberate about the time that I'm given and say, okay, well, this is an opportunity, instead of begrudgingly looking at this, if I change my perspective and say, this is an opportunity for me one-on-one to spend time with her on this many times. But it takes a change in focus. It takes you looking at things differently, whether it's carving out time to have a date or using time that you're already there. Instead of looking at it like, I've got to do this, turn it into something where you're listening, not just, communicating.
And you're learning.
Learning, that's the better word.
I even with my wife, I've got to learn them. If I don't know them, then I can't parent them. I can't love them. They become a number, become a figure, a check on a list. But when I know them, then I can sow into them. I can pour into them, and I can know how to correct them, how to lead them.
Man, that is really cool. As you were talking, it just sort of dawned on me. In many ways, you're saying we're teachers as parents, but we need to be students of our kids.
Right.
We need to study them. We need to pay attention. And I think that is a very unique insight.
It really is. Because
us.
you talk about you should listen to your kids more. No. Yes, that's
study
the technical.
them.
You should learn your kids more.
I tell my kids, and they laugh, and if you ask them, they'll probably remember this. I would always tell them, I tell my wife, I say, I know you better than you know yourself. And they always laugh, and they always giggle. But today, they will tell you, my dad knows me better than I know myself. Because they don't study themselves. They just act. But I watch them. I learn them. I know their habits and what makes them tick. So when I give them advice and they don't listen to it, I say, all right. And then time goes by, they come back, man, Dad, you were right. I say, yeah, because I know you better than you know yourself.
That's huge, man. I love that.
What a powerful observation.
Yeah.
You know, I know that for many parents out there that are processing, especially those who are in a blended family or, you know, they have extended family, you know, there is this struggle for your personal time.
Yeah.
And there is a sacrifice that's required to parent. God doesn't ask us to be perfect. No. And he's not asking us to get it right. But what he is asking is for us to give it our heart, you know, to really invest in our kids. And so what a great reminder.
The reality is, if I were talking to a blended family, the reality, and I think, at least it's in my life, maybe it's not everybody, but in all of our kids, I think there's always those kids that we gravitate towards because either personality things or the same, we like the same things. And one of the kids that I gravitate to the most is one of my wife's kids that she brought in. We just have the same personality, business sense, and just, you know, no nonsense. And so we get along very well. But if we're not careful, we start to spend all the time with the one we like the best. You know, it's not like we have a favorite, but there's one we click with. And if we don't specifically carve out time with someone else or with all of them, then the blended family becomes so complicated because her kids say, oh, you don't like me. His kids say, oh, you don't like me, because we're not really saying, I want to spend the time. I want to get to know you. Individually.
Yeah.
Not just as a group package. The group package, you know, we had a 12-passenger van for years. When we travel, you get in the van. People say, that's a nice church van. Nope, that's the family car, man. But because we get that one-on-one time is crucial. When I look at the Gospels, again, you look at Jesus, a lot of the Bible says he was going from one place to the next, and then someone was there, and he stops everything he was doing to spend time with that one person. His whole life is made of moments. And I said, look, if I want to be like him, my life has to be made up of moments.
What a great reminder.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to you, Veronne, I'm thinking, what a great example you're setting for your kids in the sense that you're representing their Heavenly Father. Yeah. You're showing them they have value, that their identity is unique and special and worthy of your attention. And I think what a wonderful foundation you're forming for your kids to grow spiritually by doing what you're doing.
I tell you, it is a funny thing is that once the teenagers became teenagers, 17, I stopped their date days. And I would take the little ones out. And every once in a while, my 18-year-old or 19, they'll say, when am I having my date day again? And I said, man, you're 18 now. You're engaged. What do you mean date day? Yeah, I want my date day. So I know in my mind that drilled something in that heart that maybe she might bring into her marriage.
Yeah.
And if I do anything, I want to plant something in their hearts that they can bring that becomes a benefit to them as a parent.
Yeah.
That's the best compliment, I think, for being a parent. You see the kid saying, man, I can use that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just have a few minutes left, but I as you're sort of ticking off the ages of your kids, I can't help but notice that there's a pretty big range here with 8 kids. Well, how old is your oldest and how young is your youngest?
Oldest turned 20 on Christmas, and the youngest is now 6.
Wow.
So she'll be 7.
That's a 14-year jump.
Yeah.
Yeah, so help us with that. There's somebody out there listening who's got the toddler tween thing
especially
happening.
In the blended family areas.
Yeah. So how do you, as a family, I mean, as a father, as a husband, how do you survive that much transition?
We did a lot of the older ones take care of the little ones. You got live-in babysitters. But at the same time, I was very specific in saying we can't make the older one, 16, whatever she was at that time, she can't always be the babysitter. She's got to have those times where she can get away and be big sister. She's got to have those times where she can go and hang out. It's really knowing when it's becoming a burden, even on the kids, because also the little kids would look at the big sister almost as mom.
Right.
And I would, say to my wife, that can't happen. There's one mom in the house, and that's mom. there's siblings, and so it's really learning how to allow them to get together and get along, to love each other, but not create that codependence where you can't be a child as well.
Right.
You don't want a kid to be a parent, and when you see them together, you think they all came from the same mom and dad all their lives, and they didn't. God did that.
It's amazing what God can weave together.
Yeah.
You know, we were sitting at our table. We had a meeting. I have a blended family too, as you know. And so we try to have meetings every so often, which is another thing that just as a side note, like I was thinking about this as people in companies or organizations, we would never think about having a company run with never meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to check in.
Yeah.
And so why we say that families are the most important part of our lives, but it's not a natural thing to have family meetings. I mean, I just think that's kind of a New Year's thing for me. I want to get more deliberate about that. One of the interesting things I was going to say came up this time is I went around the table and said, what things make us, who are we as a family? What's important to us? What do you see is important to us? Yeah. Second thing is, what is unique about the situation that is different than if I was just a parent with 3 girls and Barb was just a parent with 3 boys? What has made us better? And it was incredible because every single one of them answered. And it happens like if you don't coerce answers, they all said, like we wouldn't know what it was like living with boys, or we wouldn't know what it's like living with girls. And it's just crazy when you start getting feedback that just we can trust that God is faithful to bring things together.
Yeah.
Which is just remarkable if we're deliberate about, I mean, not even if, but in spite of sometimes us failing, God is faithful.
Family meetings, I'll say this, I agree with you. Family meetings for us was so important. We tried to make them devotionals, and sometimes we hit that, but a lot of times it's sitting down and debriefing. What's going on in your world? And here's what's going on in our world. You need to know what mom and dad think. We need to know what you think. We need to get on the same page. Again, it's like a business, like a company. We've got to run this well, and everybody's input matters. And for a parent has to realize it's not just, the Veronne and Vanetta show. It's the family. It's all of us, and we're all valuable.
That's fantastic.
That's really cool.
I want to join your family.
Yeah. Well,
I do need another boy.
No,
sold.
Man.
I'm in.
The fun I could have with that comment, I'm going to pass. But thank you, Veronne, for joining our audience. With just what a blessing you've been today. I will make sure that anyone who wants to get a hold of Pastor Veronne, if you have further questions or insights you're looking for, just check out the Brilliantly Brave website, and we'll have his contact information right there in the information for this podcast. We thank you for joining us, and we hope you've been encouraged, inspired, and renewed by this podcast. Thank you, and God bless.
Parents, remember, even if you may not feel brilliant or brave, you are. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, and love, and self-control. And I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me. 2 Timothy 1:7 and 13. This podcast is a service of iShine Ministries and the Tween Gospel Alliance. All rights reserved. Donations to Brilliantly Brave are tax-deductible at iShineLive.com. Review and subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or on our webpage. And read our blog and connect with us at WordPress@BrilliantlyBrave.com. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Brilliantly Brave.
Hi, it's Pastor Brad with Brilliantly Brave Parenting, and I am letting you know about a really awesome podcast. If you are a solo parent or you know someone who's solo parenting right now, have I got a podcast for you. Dear friend, co-host of our show, and my partner in crime, Robert Beeson, has started something really spectacular. Robert's here in the studio. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So Solo Parent Society podcast is talking to solo parents out there that are doing it alone. We talk to other solo parents that are out there, talk about their struggles and insights that they've come across, as well as experts in the fields that solo parents deal with the most. I was a single parent for 8 years, raising 3 girls. My co-host was a solo parent parent raising a boy and a girl, also for I think about 7 years. So together we talk about these different topics, and we have great guests, either solo parents, like I said, or experts in the field. So it's new, it's authentic, it's real, it's raw, and it's super fun. Solo Parent Society podcast.
Brilliantly Brave is supporting and encouraging and endorsing what this is. And if you want to check it out, it's available on iTunes?
Yeah, everywhere that Brilliantly Brave is.
Awesome. Thanks.